A parent's worst nightmare became reality for a New Zealand couple in 2017. Just 11 days after welcoming their newborn baby into the world, they woke to a quiet house and an empty crib. Their daughter was gone.
My 11-day-old baby daughter had been taken.
Panic set in instantly. The couple tore through the house, calling her name, desperate for any sign of what had happened. But the truth was already caught on camera. The entire crime had been recorded by their own backyard CCTV. The footage showed a figure dressed in black, wearing a balaclava, slipping silently through the back door. Moments later, the same figure appeared again, this time cradling the baby in her arms, a bag of stolen items slung over her shoulder. She vanished into the night. The couple's evening nanny was the first to raise the alarm, creating a commotion that jolted them fully awake to the horror unfolding in their home. Police were called immediately, and a massive search operation began. Hours later, against all odds, the baby was found alive and safely returned to her parents. The suspect, a 19-year-old woman named Sydney Tulapapa, was quickly taken into custody. But what investigators uncovered next was even more shocking. The real mastermind behind the kidnapping wasn't a stranger. It was the very nanny who had sounded the alarm in the first place. Nadine Faye Manukau Togiavalu, just 21 years old, had been with the family for only 3 days. But her deception stretched back months. Nadine had fabricated her own pregnancy, lying to her friends and family, claiming she was expecting a baby boy. She even threw herself a baby shower to make the lie more convincing. When the time came and there was no baby, she invented another lie, that her child had been taken from her. Desperate to maintain the facade, she convinced her 19-year-old cousin to help her get her baby back. Unaware of the truth, Sydney believed she was helping retrieve a child that rightfully belonged to Nadine. In court, Nadine was sentenced to 3 years in prison for her role in the kidnapping. Her cousin was released without conviction. The baby's safe recovery brought the parents a sense of relief, but the betrayal of someone they had trusted so intimately left a lasting scar. But not all tragedies involve careful planning. Sometimes they come in a single reckless moment, just as in this next story. This Halloween, we're doing something we've never done before. All week long, you can complete challenges to earn points. The top scorer wins the ultimate prize. Here's how it works. Post your scariest CreepyVids moment on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Ask people to subscribe. Use the hashtag #CreepyHalloween and tag our channels with the links in the description. That's 30 points per post, 1 per day. Leave comments under CreepyVids, ScaryVids, or DeepVids videos. Up to 3 comments per video count, worth 5 points each. Invite a friend to subscribe. If they leave a comment saying, "I joined thanks to," you'll get 10 points for every new subscriber. Watch carefully for the hidden word. Each day, a letter will appear, with the final letter revealed in the October 31st Halloween special. Guess the full word and email it to us for 20 points. Join in every single day, and you'll earn a 25-point loyalty bonus. And on Halloween night, a special bonus challenge will be revealed in the CreepyVids Halloween special. And winners will be announced on November 3rd. Third place gets a CreepyVids t-shirt of your choice. Second place also gets a CreepyVids t-shirt of your choice. And the first place will get a $25 Amazon gift card plus CreepyVids t-shirt of your choice. Let's see who stayed the most active. Let the best fans win. At first glance, the surveillance footage seems unremarkable. A silver Toyota Camry glides smoothly onto Progress Drive, headlights cutting through the quiet stillness of a business park in the early morning. But what happens next is anything but ordinary. Inside the car was 17-year-old Mackenzie Sharilla, her boyfriend Dominic Russo, and his friend Davion Flanagan. In the weeks leading up to that night, Mackenzie and Dominic's relationship had become increasingly toxic. During arguments, Mackenzie often threatened him, insulted him, and even damaged his belongings. On one occasion, after a fight, she warned him that she would crash the car. On July 31st, 2022, those words became reality. The Camry turned from Progress Drive onto Alameda Drive, and instead of slowing down, Mackenzie slammed her foot on the accelerator. The car surged forward, reaching 100 miles per hour. She jerked the wheel violently from side to side, losing all control. And then, without hesitation, she aimed the vehicle straight at a brick warehouse. The crash was catastrophic. Dominic Russo died instantly. Davion Flanagan was rushed to the hospital, but later succumbed to his injuries. Mackenzie was found unconscious behind the wheel, but she survived with only minor injuries. In the months that followed, investigators pieced together the truth behind what initially seemed like a horrific accident. They uncovered the threats, the volatile relationship, and the disturbing clarity of her actions that night. In August 2023, Mackenzie Shirilla was convicted on 12 counts, including aggravated vehicular homicide, assault, and substance possession. She was sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for parole after 15 years. What appeared to be a tragic crash was, in the end, something far darker. An act of rage behind the wheel, captured frame by frame on a silent camera. And while that moment was driven by rage, the next unfolded in silence, far out at sea. The Norwegian Spirit, a luxury cruise ship operated by Norwegian Cruise Line, has seen its share of accidents over the years. But in August 2024, one incident would leave an especially tragic mark on its history. Lee, a Taiwanese passenger, had joined the 6-day voyage that set sail from Jeju Island in Korea to Keelung, Taiwan, with stops in Japan and other destinations along the way. It was supposed to be a relaxing, scenic journey, the kind of cruise designed to create memories that last a lifetime. But on the final day of the trip, everything changed. Lee was standing on the upper deck, leaning against the railing, watching the ocean as the ship made its way toward Taiwan. In a single, devastating moment, he lost his balance and fell overboard. A family on one of the lower decks happened to be taking photos when they accidentally captured the horrifying moment he fell. Unlike other cases where response times are questioned, this time the crew reacted immediately. Alarms were raised within moments, and the ship came to a halt for nearly 40 minutes while rescue boats scoured the water in a frantic search. Passengers watched in silence as the crew worked against the clock. When they finally found him, it was already too late. Despite intense medical efforts, Lee could not be revived. His death was confirmed shortly after he was brought back on board. Authorities investigated swiftly, and Norwegian Cruise Line cooperated fully with local police. No signs of foul play were found. It was ruled a tragic accident, a man who had simply lost his footing in the wrong place at the wrong time. For the other passengers, what had been a luxury vacation ended with the sobering reality of how fragile life at sea can be. A single slip at sea changed everything. But the next story is no accident. It's something far more haunting. What began as an ordinary winter day in Delphi, Indiana on February 13, 2017, would end in one of the most heartbreaking and chilling crimes in recent American history. Abigail Williams and Liberty German, best friends who shared everything, were two bright, kind-hearted teenagers with their entire futures ahead of them. They spent nearly every day together, inseparable in a way only childhood best friends can be. That afternoon, like so many before, the girls decided to explore the local trails near the Putney Bridge. It was a place they knew well, a familiar backdrop to their small-town lives. Throughout their walk, they stayed in touch with family through social media posts and messages. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until the moment it wasn't. At around 4 p.m., Liberty's grandfather arrived to pick them up, but the girls weren't there. At first, their family thought little of it. Teenagers run late, they lose track of time. But as the minutes turned into hours, that casual assumption turned into something far darker. The girls were reported missing, and what began as a simple search soon escalated into a massive community effort. The next day, the unthinkable happened. Abigail and Liberty's bodies were discovered off the trail near Putney Bridge. a small, tight-knit community that had always felt safe was shaken to its core. In the hours before their deaths, Liberty had managed to record a short video on her phone, a single, chilling clue. It showed a man walking toward them, his voice calm and commanding, "Down the hill." That brief clip became the cornerstone of the case, shared around the world in the hope someone would recognize him. For years, despite thousands of tips and witness statements, the investigation seemed to lead nowhere. But in 2022, a major breakthrough changed everything. A man named Richard Allen was taken into custody. Allen admitted to being on the trails that same day, claiming he was simply out watching the fish. But one critical piece of evidence would tie him to the scene. A .40 caliber unspent round found near the girls' bodies matched a firearm registered to him. Witnesses also reported seeing his truck parked near the trail that afternoon. Combined with the matching clothing description from the video, the evidence pointed to Allen as the prime suspect. Richard Allen was ultimately charged with the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Even years later, the town of Delphi still carries the weight of that day. A wound that runs through an entire community. Two best friends, lost far too soon. A case that haunted the nation. And a small piece of cell phone footage that may have finally given them a voice in the pursuit of justice. It took a long time for this mystery to be solved. But in the next story, it was clear from the beginning who did it. On February 16, 2023, shoppers stood in line at an ordinary retail store, the kind of everyday setting where nothing truly out of the ordinary is supposed to happen. Among them was Rogerio Santos Dilva, a 36-year-old man waiting patiently like everyone else, or so it seemed. Without warning, Rogerio stepped out of the queue and calmly walked toward a stack of orange shopping carts near the entrance. He lifted one into his hands, not with frustration, not in a rush, but with a strange and measured calm. As he turned back, the woman who had been standing behind him pushed her cart forward to take his spot in line, unaware that in just seconds, her ordinary day would be shattered. Rogerio raised the empty metal cart high above his head and hurled it straight at her. The steel frame struck her in the head with brutal force, and she collapsed instantly. The entire assault was captured on the store's CCTV. Nearby shoppers screamed and rushed toward her, some kneeling on the floor to check if she was breathing. She remained unconscious for several moments before being placed in a wheelchair and taken to the hospital. Remarkably, despite the severity of the attack, the 45-year-old woman suffered no life-threatening injuries. She later stated she had done nothing to provoke him. Rogerio was arrested on the spot and charged with minor bodily harm. Not long after, he was released. The random, senseless nature of the attack left many stunned, a reminder of how violence can erupt in the most mundane of places, without warning or reason. And just when you think it couldn't get more unpredictable, it does. On the morning of May 5th, 2017, the streets of London were just beginning to stir to life. Commuters moved steadily across Putney Bridge, a familiar route for many on their way to work. Among them was a 33-year-old woman, walking as she had done countless times before. But this ordinary morning would become a moment she would never forget. As she crossed the bridge, a man jogging toward her suddenly veered into her path. Without warning, he thrust his arm out and shoved her violently into the road. She fell hard, landing directly in the path of an oncoming number 430 bus. It was moving at roughly 12 miles per hour. The driver swerved at the last possible second. The bus missed her by mere inches. A split second was all that stood between her and death. 15 minutes later, the jogger returned to the scene, still running along the same route. The woman, shaken and bruised, tried to confront him. He ignored her completely, as if nothing had happened, and kept going. Fortunately, the entire attack had been captured on the bus's dash cam. The footage quickly became the cornerstone of a police investigation. Detectives described the suspect as a white man in his 30s, with brown eyes and short brown hair. Over the following months, police reviewed more than 50 potential suspects and arrested 3 men. But each one was released without charge. In June 2018, after a year of searching, the case was closed with no resolution. The man who had nearly ended a life in broad daylight has never been identified. The image of him jogging away, while sirens filled the air behind him, remains a haunting reminder of how quickly a random act of violence can change everything. The woman on that bridge was lucky and survived. But the next story, sadly, didn't end the same way. On the afternoon of October 20th, 2020, at around 2:20 p.m., Celia Ward, a 77-year-old retired midwife, set out for what should have been a quiet, uneventful bike ride along a shared-use pavement beside a 30 miles per hour ring road in Huntingdon, Cambridge. She had no way of knowing that in a matter of seconds, a single encounter would end her life. At the same time, 46-year-old Oriole Gray was walking toward her on the same path. The two women moved closer, an ordinary moment on an ordinary afternoon. But as they passed, Oriole suddenly shouted, "Get off the pavement!" and gestured sharply with her left arm. The unexpected outburst startled Celia. She lost her balance and veered off the path, straight into the road, directly into the path of an oncoming car. The impact was immediate. Emergency services were called, but it was already too late. Celia Ward was pronounced dead at the scene. Meanwhile, Oriole, who has cerebral palsy and partial blindness, didn't stop to check on her. She simply continued her walk, heading to collect a prescription as though nothing had happened. She was later arrested and charged with unlawful manslaughter. On March 2, 2023, Oriole Gray was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The case drew intense public debate about intent, responsibility, and the fragile moments in which lives are forever changed. Then, in 2024, everything shifted again. Her legal team successfully argued that shouting and gesturing alone could not legally be considered an assault. Her conviction was overturned and she was released. No retrial was scheduled. For Oriole, the legal chapter ended. But for Celia Ward's family, the loss remains final. A reminder that a single, fleeting moment can unravel a life completely. And while that tragedy was over in seconds, this last story unfolded slowly, over years of relentless cruelty. Drachenlord is a German YouTuber who was mostly unknown outside of Germany before his controversial behavior online turned him into the target of relentless and often brutal trolling. His entire online history has since become a strange mixture of tragedy, poor choices, and a community that pushed its obsession far beyond normal boundaries. In the beginning, his channel had a simple focus: metal music. He gained quick attention for his loud personality, intense headbanging, and unapologetic love for the genre. But not all attention is good. In Drachenlord's case, most of it would spiral into something dark and toxic. He was outspoken and frequently shared strong opinions on topics he didn't fully understand. And that became the spark that ignited years of hostility from online trolls. He was widely disliked by the public, and that collective disdain soon evolved into something far more dangerous. Trolls began targeting him on an unprecedented level, doxing him, stalking him, and organizing harassment campaigns. But Drachenlord's own decisions didn't make things easier. Instead of backing away, he openly fought back, threatening and provoking his haters online. He even shared his home address, challenging them to confront him in person. This marked the beginning of a long, chaotic chapter. His house became known among trolls as the Dragon Bunker. It was treated like a public attraction, a place for harassment games. People egged the property, threw garbage, and even hurled bricks through his windows. They called it Dragon Games, and to them, it became a twisted form of entertainment. As the years went on, Drachenlord's mental health visibly deteriorated. The weight of the harassment and constant tension wore him down to the point where he began carrying sticks and, in moments of paranoia and anger, even attacking people who had nothing to do with the trolls. His content reflected that downward spiral, unstable, angry, and filled with exhaustion. Over the course of his controversial career, Drachenlord was arrested multiple times, which ultimately led to a 2-year prison sentence. He lost government assistance, personal opportunities, and any real sense of privacy. He was eventually banned from streaming, forced to sell his house, and pushed into a nomadic and unstable life. Today, he lives a quieter existence, but the shadow of his past still follows him. He occasionally runs into trouble with haters, and his name remains one of the most infamous in the German YouTube sphere. While Drachenlord himself may not be a purely sympathetic figure, the level of harassment he endured crossed well beyond criticism, becoming a years-long public spectacle that few could truly endure. Now that was all for today, folks. If you enjoyed these horrifying clips, click to see more on the video on screen.